Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you my first science fiction and fantasy wrap-up of 2023, and I have some great books to talk about, including some new releases, some new favorites, and I also have a really exciting giveaway for an entire science fiction trilogy, one that I have already started reading and love, and the final book is coming out soon, and I actually think a lot of you that enjoy my taste in books are going to really enjoy this one as well, so I'm very excited to share this international giveaway with you. All that being said, let's get started. First, because I can't wait when I'm excited about something, let's start by talking about this giveaway. And so Angry Robot Books, the publisher, has reached out to me and offered to let me do an international giveaway of all 3 books in the Outside Trilogy by Ada Hoffmann. So again, the first book is The Outside, and then it goes on to The Fallen, and then the third and final book, The Infinite, is going to be coming out very soon. And so I'm going to be reading and reviewing it, so you'll hear my final thoughts on the last book in 2 weeks from now. But I have already read the first 2 books. I'm actually currently in the process of doing a reread because I want to be caught up so that I can give my full thoughts on the trilogy as a whole. But if you're not familiar with the series, I really like it. This is a piece of science fiction that has elements of cosmic Lovecraftian horror within it. So within the story, there is a brilliant scientist who develops this new warp drive technology. She turns it on, things go terribly wrong, and things blow up. And this story is set within a larger world where there are artificial intelligence that rule over humanity like gods. And you get to figure out as the story goes on how they got to that place. And then of course there is more revealed. There's just some really kooky, out-of-the-box world-building ideas within this story. This is definitely a story or an idea that reminds me a lot of The Machineries of Empire by Yoon-Hae Lee, which, if you don't know, is pretty much my favorite science fiction series. It's not identical, but it definitely has the same idea of a science fiction story that really blends the line between different genres and just really goes outside of the classic box and really plays around with the tropes and does, again, world building that I haven't seen in other places. And it's definitely the kind of series you want to reread, which again is why I plan to go back and get through the series before reviewing the final book, is that there's so much to pick up with the second time around and probably the third time around, because I don't think this is going to be my last read through of the series, but I'm really enjoying the series and I think I'm going to love the final book, so I feel very confident to offer this as a giveaway. So for those of you watching, I'll have the instructions in the description box, but basically this giveaway is open internationally. I'm going to randomly select a winner based off a comment, so in order to enter the giveaway, I'll ask that you subscribe to my channel, like the video as a thank you, and then also leave a comment that specifically says enter me in the giveaway, because if you just leave a random comment that doesn't mention the giveaway, I'm going to assume you're not interested. So if you do those things, I'm going to randomly generate a number and count through the comments and figure out who is the winner, and I will message you back, so make sure that your comments are on for YouTube, because if you don't see my comment, eventually I have to repick a new winner. But I'm going to have you email me, and I will be asking you to provide me with a mailing address along with a phone number so that they can send the books to you. I will pass along that information to an appropriate person at Angry Robot Books, and they will send that along in a timely manner. And so that's how you get into it. And again, I highly recommend this. I know a lot of my subscribers, based off the taste, the things that you describe liking in the comments, I think you're really going to like this one. And finally, I do want to keep this giveaway 18 or older. So if you are a young person and interested in this book, please have your parent comment on this video and I will go through them. I just do not work with minors in any way with any giveaways. Even with parent permission, just have your parent leave the comment themselves on your behalf. But otherwise, I'm really excited to do this. I'm going to have the cutoff be Sunday, so you have a few days to enter, and I'll change the title card once the giveaway is closed. But yes, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to hold a giveaway. It's always really fun, and especially when it's a book that I'm particularly enthusiastic about. I like the first book, I love the second book even more, and I have very high hopes for how the series is going to end, and I'm just excited to share it all with you. Now, getting into the actual book reviews, I read Burrowed by Mary Baader Kaley, and this is a book that I received for review from Angry Robot Books. They do tend to send a lot my way because I really enjoy their stuff. And so this is a piece of science fiction that is set in a future where the world has been divided by a genetic plague or a virus that has caused a great distinction between 2 groups of humanity. So there are those that live on the surface and they are strong but do not have the same level of intelligence as those that live below the earth, and so they live in burrows, and they are much more intelligent, but they have a lot of physical challenges, so they have very sensitive eyesight and are typically weaker. And so the two societies are very divided and have their prejudices towards each other. We follow a young person who is getting an opportunity to leave the burrow and go up to the surface and actually get to study the virus and kind of look at what is happening and see if they can come up with solutions. The story goes from there, and there's actually several plot points that happen beyond that, so that is just the initial setup. So right off the bat, I was a little bit nervous going into this book, only because in the last few years, medical science has become so politicized, and I wasn't entirely sure if the author and I were going to kind of rub each other the wrong way in how they handled this topic, but I was really happy the author provided some authorial intent at the beginning of the book that helped me to frame the story better, and I like this one. It was different. It was unique. I would say my weird criticism of this book is the fact that I actually wish it had been a shorter book. As I kind of mentioned, there are a lot of plot points, there's a lot of twists and turns, and the story keeps going forward. And I actually think I would have liked the story more as a novella, because I actually would have preferred a more simplified version of what the story was trying to do, just really analyzing these two groups and how they work together. But I felt like the author was really trying to bring in a lot of like twists and be like, and then this happens, and then this happens. And I would have been much more satisfied with something that was a little bit more cerebral and intellectual and actually had less plot, which is pretty much the opposite of what I normally say. But this is a case where I felt like this book was trying to do a little too much, but I still enjoyed a lot of aspects of the story. I thought that it was interesting, unique. I was also pleasantly surprised to find out that it had a lot of hard science within it. Normally a book like this I would expect to be much more anthropological and more soft science, where it's more discussing the people and the characters, which are definitely there, but at the same time the author is bringing in a lot of scientific ideas, which doesn't make the book unapproachable, but definitely will appeal most to those of us that enjoy those aspects of the story. So definitely one that like wasn't quite everything I wanted to be. It definitely felt like a debut in my mind, but it was doing a lot of interesting things, and I would definitely check out this author again. I think they play around with a lot of ideas I like, and it's just a matter of mixing them up in just the perfect formula, which this one had a lot of those elements, but it didn't quite get there for me. Next up is The Keeper 6 by Kate Elliott. This is a novella that I received for review from Tor.com, and this is a piece of sci fantasy that follows a woman who has the ability to jump between multiverses. She hasn't done it in a while. However, when she wakes up to hear the cry of her son who is being stolen away, she goes off to look for them, and the story goes from there. I've read Kate Elliott before, and I'm still looking for the perfect 5-star read from her. I think that she writes very interesting, entertaining stories with some really creative ideas, but it never quite hits the sweet spot of being like a wow new favorite. And I like the world building within here. I'd say it was my favorite part of the story, but there was nothing in the story that really, again, wowed or surprised me in a way that really hooked me in or wanted me to spend more time in this world with these characters. I thought the characters were fine. It was a simple and, you know, very normal setup that you see so many times in books. It's relatable, it's understandable. There's nothing inherently I found wrong with this book, but it didn't really give me the excitement that I wanted to. I wanted to be excited about the jumping through multiverses. I wanted to have more excitement, and definitely it leans towards fantasy while it has the backdrop of science fiction. In terms of narrative, it does read more on the fantasy side, which I expected, and I think will appeal most to readers that prefer that genre over the other. So like this one, but not a new favorite. It was one that had a lot of potential, but I'm still looking for that perfect Kate Elliott book for me. And next is a backlist title that I checked out on my own, and that is The Many-Colored Land by Julian May. And this is a story set in a far-flung future where they've discovered the ability to time travel, but their time travel only works in one direction. It's a one-way trip, and it allows them to go back to the past. So they actually go far back into the past of Earth, and people who are looking to leave and get away from the future and exile themselves or just start a new adventure choose to go along on this journey, and then we follow individuals as they go back into the past and form a society. I thought the premise of this one was so cool. I really enjoy time travel stories, and I do enjoy when science fiction actually goes back into the past. I'm always looking for more historical science fiction, but it's kind of a hard genre to find because of course science fiction is always about moving forward, so this book kind of used time travel as a perfect way to blend the two things together. In terms of narrative, it ended up reading a lot more like fantasy than science fiction, which again I was expecting, expecting, but I do wish that the science fiction or time travel elements had played a larger role in the later part of the book. I felt like it was a setup for the story, and then it kind of got left behind in place of just finding out what the characters are doing and following them along. And it was interesting, but not something that was super memorable. They were likable characters, there was entertaining plot lines, and it was enjoyable, but I don't know if I'm like really compelled to continue on with this series, because again, I kind of wanted to get further focused on the science fiction elements, which kind of disappeared later into the book. But love to know if you enjoy this author or his work. I know my library has more of his books, so I'll probably be checking them out, because this one was definitely a really fun, entertaining read. Next, I want to talk about Weaveworld by Clive Barker. Now, normally I would talk about him in my horror and dark fiction content, but this book is decidedly fantasy. I've heard people describe it as dark horror or like dark fantasy, but really I described it as more portal fantasy. I didn't find it to be much darker than most of the fantasy that I'm drawn to. Within the story, in the far-flung past, there was this other world that was created, and then we follow in the current time different characters that end up accessing this world. And so the story starts out with a woman who has been given care of this carpet, and the story goes from there as they slowly, of course, come to access this other world. And so this is a story that I think the title fits perfectly, because there are so many threads to this story, and it's really the kind of story that weaves together different plots and narratives and ideas, and there's a lot going on. It's a fairly large book, even for me, and I definitely found myself, as I was reading it, I was following the story. It wasn't as if I was getting lost, but sometimes, I don't know if you have this experience where you're reading a book and you're enjoying and following along what is happening in the moment on the page, but you're still trying to figure out what is the larger story, where is this going, and there's so many different elements and characters and plots that are kind of getting woven together. That's the kind of book that just demands to be reread. So at the time of recording this, I've only read it once, but guarantee I'm going to pick it up again before the end of the year, because this book has potential to be a new favorite. It might end up on my favorite list for 2023 for backlist titles, but I'm going to have to give it a second go because it was a lot. I remember really liking the ending. The middle section, I'll be honest, there's a lot in the book, and some of it felt like it could have been edited out or tightened up. Again, now that I know where the story is going, I can much more easily reevaluate how the story got there and if it needed to do everything it was doing along the way. So definitely enjoyed this one. A lot to digest, probably a book that I really need to re-review once I have read it once again. And so I'll keep you posted down the road if it becomes a full-flung favorite, but a really strong entry. I think I've read one Clive Barker before, but I definitely should read more by him and reread what I have read in the past, because I love his prose. I really like his ideas, and I definitely want to check out more by this like beloved author who is like pretty iconic, again, the horror genre, but of course now I'm reading his fantasy stuff. And I also read The Shadow of the Wind, which is this classic literary magical realism story that follows a young boy who gets the opportunity to go into this lost library. He finds this book and the story goes from there. This is a book that I wanted to pick up because not only do I see it as a favorite of people, but specifically a lot of people name it as their all-time favorite book, which is really high praise. But I was very nervous going into it because it is specifically listed as a literary fantasy, and that doesn't always work for me. I will say that this book has beautiful prose. The story is lyrical and beautiful. The characters are well developed. It is like this beautiful arc, this drama, this emotional story. It has so much going for it, and I liked it, but it just wasn't fully to my taste. So probably a lot of you could have guessed that when I first talked about this book in my winter TBR, and it definitely was not bad. I enjoyed a lot of it. It definitely reminds me of why I prefer genre fiction, and I just felt like not a lot happened in the story, even though things did, and it was just very focused on some dramatic elements of the story where I would have rather had more focus on the fantasy, which is just predictable for me. So I would still recommend it if you love literary fiction. You will absolutely probably love this one, as everyone else did, but I like this one. Probably not for me, probably won't continue on. I think there's like a later book to go to, but I'm glad I tried it out, and moving on. And finally, probably my favorite books out of this video is the Traitor Burrowed Cormorant, which is actually a reread for me. This is by Seth Dickinson. Within the story, there is a young woman who, as a child, her nation was colonized by this other group, and they came in and not just took over, but specifically they went to dismantle their culture. So they went and changed their education system. And so they really lost a lot of their cultural norms, especially surrounding different acceptance of queer and polyamorous polyamorous relationships. And so we follow this woman as she's seen her family torn apart, and then she decides to seek revenge by actually going within the inside of the organization. She becomes an accountant and works her way up into a place of power. That is just the first book, and this is a book again that I have read and reviewed before in this channel, but it's been years, and so I read it again and absolutely loved it. I think if you love morally gray characters like something in a Game of Thrones, you will love this as well, because Burrowed is an incredibly complex character and all the supporting cast around her are equally unlikable, difficult characters that she's just trying to maneuver around. This is the epitome of political fantasy and it's done so well, and so I really enjoyed this one. It is just so smart, so thoughtful, and yeah, I just loved it a lot. So finally, after years, I don't know why I waited so long, I went on to the Monster Brew Cormorant, which I would say is just as strong as the first book. I almost liked it more. I thought it was a little bit more engaging and spent a lot of time with the characters that I enjoyed, kind of advancing the plot, and was, yeah, just as good. So if you like the first book, continue on. And then I did catch up with the series, so I've now read everything that's published, and the third book is The Tyrant, Burrowed Cormorant. And this is a book that I enjoyed a little bit less than the first two, but it was still a good read. So this is my least favorite of the three, but I believe the series is going to end up as a quartet. But despite not loving every page of this book, I still found it to be very engaging for the most part, especially towards the end, which is the setup for the final book in this quartet, and I'm dying to get my hands on it. I don't think there's a release date right now, which is unfortunate, but highly recommend this series if you love political fantasy with morally gray, complex characters that make brutal decisions. You will love this one. Highly, highly recommend. It was so fun to finally catch up with this series. Definitely a new favorite series of mine. And I want to try something new in 2023, and that is to bring back Booktube shoutouts within my review wrap-ups. And so when I remember, I'm going to mention a booktuber that I highly recommend, someone that I watch and love, who typically has less viewers than me, so that hopefully I can help more of you find their channel. And so this week it was an easy pick, and that is Whitney from the Secret Sauce of Storycraft, and she is predominantly a science fiction booktuber who I love and I've basically become besties with, or at least I'm trying to be, so definitely give her some love so that she knows that other people on Booktube enjoy her content as well. So just like me, she reads a lot of science fiction, which again I think is especially interesting to get a female perspective on the genre, because it's definitely more male dominant, at least here on YouTube, and I just think that she is just really fun. She does some really fun, interesting things with her editing. She's very quirky and far more creative than I am. You definitely just have to look at her thumbnails on her videos, and she's so creative. You know what my thumbnails look like? They're not great. Hers are fantastic, and again, she brings really interesting commentary to her videos and her book reviews, and we're also planning on doing a buddy read soon, so I'm sure you'll be hearing about her again on my channel, but highly recommend. Link down below, go check her out. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And don't forget, if you are interested, to enter the giveaway that is going to be linked down below in the description if you want more information. And so drop a comment saying enter me in the giveaway and I will make that happen. And if you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of science fiction, fantasy, as well as horror thrillers and some true crime. And if you want to help me out with this video, you can share this around online, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment, even if it's just a little emoji like a dragon. And if you want to hit that little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.